Well, it was a historic day at the White House as Joe Biden signed what the Washington Post is calling a landmark bill to protect same-sex and interracial marriages. Now, you thought that interracial marriage has not been a big deal in the United States for approximately 50, maybe 60 years, and you'd be right. The whole purpose of shoving interracial marriage into the same-sex marriage bill was to pretend that if you oppose same-sex marriage, it is the same thing as if you oppose interracial marriage, that racism and quote-unquote homophobia, that these are all the same phenomenon, that really it's all about bigotry and evil. That's the reason why they shoved all of this into the same bill, so that if you voted against the federal enshrinement of same-sex marriage, then you were also voting against federal enshrinement of interracial marriage, right? It's a particularly vicious and stupid game. But Joe Biden was out there celebrating this. They had a star-studded event with music and wonderful guests. We'll get to some of their guests in just a little while because these really are the cream of the American crop. It's the best that Western civilization has to offer. President Biden on Tuesday afternoon signed the Respect for Marriage Act into law, according to the Washington Post, granting federal protections to same-sex and interracial couples, marking a milestone in the decades-long fight for marriage equality. And so I think that it's important to note here that what we saw yesterday at the White House is the beginning. It is not the end. Everybody who's pretending that this was the end point of the same-sex marriage movement, that the end point of the LGBTQ minus plus divided by sign movement is going to be same-sex marriage is dead wrong. And Joe Biden said that out loud yesterday. And it is very clear that the goal here, the goalposts keep moving. They keep moving because in the end, what the LGBTQ plus minus divided by sign movement is about is not merely the idea that they should be able to live the lives that they want without being bothered in the privacy of their own homes. The idea is that the ideology that undergirds their belief system must be imposed on you. You as a religious person in your daily life, you in your schools, you in your churches. The notion that this is going to stop is just a lie. It is not true. And as proof, I would like to offer this clip of Joe Biden circa 2006, because the goalposts have moved. I've mentioned this before. The goalposts moved from the reasonable to the not reasonable to the insane. They moved from, we wish to lead our sexual lives as we want without you interfering in our bedroom. And Americans, for a very long time, said that's fine. Even sodomy laws, for example, that were on the books in many states were generally not enforced, even in the years well leading up to Lawrence v. Texas. So they said, just leave us alone. We don't want to be criminalized in terms of our private activity. Fine. Then it turned into, we just want civil unions so that if we are in a relationship with a member of the same sex, these people can visit us at the hospital and they can be in our wills just by nature of law. And many Americans were like, okay, that's totally fine. All right, makes sense. In fact, it was Mitt Romney in Massachusetts who was one of the first people to sign into law civil unions in the state of Massachusetts. Then it was, well, it's not enough for us to have them called civil unions. We want them to be called marriage. We want the same moral respect as a traditional marriage. And a lot of people say, well, hold up a second. This isn't the same phenomenon. And you can say a lot of things about same-sex relationships, but it is very difficult to claim they have the same societal value as traditional male-female dyads producing children, which is what the institution of marriage is predicated upon. The institution of marriage is just an enshrinement of the simple biological fact that men and women combine to create children and then raise those children. That is all that marriage is. You can pretend that other forms of relationship are equivalent. You can pretend that other forms of relationship have similar societal value. They do not. So a lot of people say, well, no, hold up just a minute. But the case that the left made on this was that marriage really isn't about the production of children. It's really not about creating family units. Marriage is just about who you love. And once they had redefined that, and they'd actually done this well in advance of same-sex marriage, they'd done this with regard to, for example, no-fault divorce. The idea being that there wasn't anything sacred about marriage. There wasn't anything unifying or creative of a family unit about marriage. It was just about who you loved. So if you didn't love somebody, then divorce was totally on the table. So no-fault divorce is fine. Once marriage had been redefined as just love between two individual human beings, then of course same-sex marriage fell under that rubric. So many Americans were like, even there, they were like, okay. And then it moved to, well, now, if you are a person who doesn't actually believe that same-sex marriage and traditional marriage are morally equivalent, you still must celebrate same-sex marriage in every aspect of your life. It's very important that you do so. And your kids must be taught about this stuff at the earliest possible age. When your kids go to school, they must learn that same-sex marriage and traditional marriage are exactly the same, that all forms of sexual activity are equivalently moral and decent and fulfilling and good. Okay, that's how far the ball has moved. And it's moved really far, really fast. And this is why I say that when the left says we got what we wanted here, they're lying. They're lying. When they said same-sex marriage was the end point, it is not the end point. It is the beginning point. Here is Joe Biden circa 2006 talking about why there was no necessity for a constitutional amendment to protect traditional marriage. He says there's no real reason for this sort of thing. The reason, why would we need a constitutional amendment to protect traditional marriage as the definition of marriage in federal law? After all, who would be pushing such a thing? Who would be pushing the idea of redefining marriage? Here's Joe Biden, 2006. Tucker Carlson showed this clip last night.
The world's going to Hades in a handbasket. We are desperately concerned about the circumstance relating to avian flu. We don't have enough vaccines. We don't have enough police officers. And we're going to debate the next 3 weeks, I'm told, gay marriage, a flag amendment, and God only knows what else. I can't believe the American people can't see through this. We already have a law, the Defense of Marriage Act, where we've all voted, or I voted and others said, look, marriage is between a man and a woman, and states must respect that. Nobody's violated that law. There's been no challenge to that law. Why do we need a constitutional amendment? Marriage is between a man and a woman.
That was Joe Biden in 2006. It is now 2022. 16 years is not all that long a time. And now Joe Biden is on the lawn at the White House celebrating same-sex marriage being enshrined into federal law without proper protections for people who disagree that same-sex marriage is on the same moral par as traditional marriage. I mean, it's pretty amazing stuff, is it not? And it suggests that when people like Joe Biden say in 2006 that same-sex marriage is not on the table, they are lying to you. They are not telling you the truth. And when they deny outright that, for example, that when they say, we're not coming after your religious community, we're not coming after your church, we're not coming after your religious school, we're not coming after your business, they're lying. It's not true. So yesterday, on the lawn of the White House, Joe Biden declared that today was a great day. Here was Joe Biden. He's wearing his aviator shades, which means that he's in a good mood, according to the press. It means that he's winning, according to the press. Here was Joe Biden yesterday.
Today's a good day. A day America takes a vital step toward equality, toward liberty and justice, not just for some, but for everyone. Everyone.
Okay, notice, a vital step toward equality. Right, it's a step. So what does equality actually look like in Joe Biden's view? In Joe Biden's view, what equality actually looks like is the transing of the children, for example. This is something he actively talked about in his speech. Equality looks like you should be able to demand that people who disagree with you bow to your whim and self-definition. This is what Joe Biden's equality looks like. That language is very important when he says it's a step toward equality. He's not saying, we have achieved, we're done. He is saying, we have gotten to this point, and now there's still further to go, because the transgressive movement, which is about imploding all of the vital institutions, the intermediate institutions of American society, moves apace. You have to understand, this is part of a broader rubric on the part of the radical left, which has now infused much of the traditional left. And that rubric is that in the name of quote-unquote individual rights, and when we say rights here, what we mean is essentially libertinism. In the name of our sexual self-fulfillment, all intermediate institutions that tend to inculcate things like duty need to be destroyed. Those things are impositions. They are impositions on our authenticity. Right? Who you are is your authentic feeling about yourself on the interior of your being. And anything that imposes on you, any societal institution, family, church, neighborhood, civil society, any of those things that impose on you, they must be destroyed. They have to be destroyed because otherwise you can't truly be free. And so the only institutions that should exist in society are the atomized individual on the one hand, with their subjective, important sense of authenticity, and the giant national state on the other. Joe Biden will be here to obliterate all of the intermediate institutions of American life and cram down a universalistic view of how humanity should work from the top. And here you will be at the bottom, the atomized individual separated from traditional notions of family, separated from religious community, separated from people who share any perspective on the world about a higher good. All those intermediate institutions will be destroyed. And in the end, it will just be you and the state and nothing in between. And that is the goal that Joe Biden is actively attempting to pursue right here. The obliteration of those intermediate institutions, by the way, is not going to make America stronger. It's going to make America insanely weaker. It's going to lead to an incredible rise in depression, in polarization, in suicidal ideation. People without any sort of intermediate societal structures tend to founder. They tend to be chaotic and confused. They don't have any sort of guidance. They don't know what the rules are. They feel as though they're on a desert island except for a distant state, which tells them that they should be happy because they have nothing to be tied to. But human beings don't actually exist as atomized individuals in the world. That is not how human beings actually work. We are not atomized individuals in the world. We are part of families. We are part of communities. We are part of things larger than ourselves. And that thing can't just be Joe Biden at the White House celebrating as the height of American life, radical individual autonomy. That is not enough. That cannot support a durable society. That's been the case that the left's been making for a very, very long time, is that the most durable or important form of society is the one where there are no standards and no rules, except for a society that mirrors back at you what you are feeling at any given moment. That is not a society. That is a chaotic, anarchic, bizarre amalgamation of chaotic tyranny, tyranny on the one hand, and bizarre chaos on the other. It's almost an anarchic tyranny. Like on the very local level, it's anarchy because you don't have any intermediate institutions. And on the national level, it's tyranny to enforce the anarchy, to obliterate all of those intermediate institutions. That is really what this is about. Again, this is why he keeps saying this is a first step. So Joe Biden says, by the way, there is nothing more decent, more dignified, or more American than two dudes getting married or two ladies getting married and forcing people of traditional bent to bow to their whims.
When a person can be married in the morning and thrown out of a restaurant for being gay in the afternoon, this is still wrong. Wrong. And that's why the people you heard speak today continue to fight to pass the Equality Act.
Okay, the Equality Act goes way further than what exactly was in the same-sex marriage bill. The Equality Act basically obliterates all individual rights in the name of the government telling you that you have to abide by Joe Biden's view of same-sex marriage, or gender identity, or sexual orientation. By the way, this is not happening on a wide scale across the United States. I'm not aware anywhere, actually, this is happening, where people who are gay are walking into a restaurant or being turned away specifically because they are gay. What is happening is that you will see a gay couple who is specifically targeting a religious baker, like they did in the Masterpiece Cake Shop case, for destruction, walking into the cake shop, demanding that this baker celebrate their predilections and their activities. And then the baker saying, I'm not going to celebrate that. I'm happy to sell you a cake that we have right here. This is exactly what happened in the Masterpiece Cake Shop case, by the way. The baker, Jack Phillips, literally said to them, here is a cake. I will sell it to you, but I'm not going to use my creative abilities to celebrate your activity. And they sued him in Colorado, and it cost him hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and he won. And then another couple came by and tried to force him to bake a cake celebrating a gender transition. The targeting will not stop, because until all of society mirrors the individual sexual preference of people on the left, all of society must be reshaped, and all of those institutions must be torn down, and individuals must be bulldozed. Individual rights must be bulldozed. Again, this is I'm going to say it 1,000 times because it's still true. There is no end to this slippery slope. Alrighty, guys, the rest of the show is continuing right now. You're not going to want to miss it. We'll be speaking with Dr. Marty Makary about whether the big pharma companies lied to you about the vaccines, plus Eliza Blue, survivor of sexual assault, who is now speaking out about what Twitter was doing to essentially facilitate the spread of child sexual abuse material. If you're not a member, click the link in the description and join us.